Buonasera, innanzitutto grazie della vostra presenza. Continuano con l'incontro di oggi appunto gli appuntamenti con gli artisti di fotografia europea. Oggi pomeriggio Erik Kessels appunto parlerà della sua mostra, un progetto che ha realizzato, concepito per il festival Unfinished Father, che è allestito alla sinagoga, negli spazi della sinagoga. Con Erik Kessels dialogheranno oggi Giovanna Calvenzi, curatrice e fotoeditor, e Walter Guadagnini, il Comitato Scientifico di Fotografia Europea, curatore e anche autore del saggio dedicato al progetto di Kessels che è raccolto nel catalogo di Fotografia Europea 2015. Grazie.
Grazie per la presentazione, buonasera e grazie a voi per essere qui, grazie anche a Giovanna e a Erik Kessels per la loro partecipazione. Dunque vi racconto intanto come si svolgerà questo nostro incontro. Io e Giovanna Calvenzi faremo una breve introduzione alla figura di Kessels e poi lasciamo il palco interamente a lui, che ha preparato uno slideshow con un suo racconto del suo lavoro, in particolare del suo lavoro fotografico. Quindi così, lasciando ovviamente il tempo alla fine per le vostre eventuali questioni, che naturalmente speriamo ci siano. Sicuramente il lavoro di Kessels apre talmente tanti orizzonti che immagino poi sarà facile che arrivino e mi auguro che arrivino delle domande. Erik Kessels è un personaggio vero all'interno del mondo della fotografia e vorrei dire della cultura europea contemporanea, è olandese. C'è una parte del suo lavoro che oggi non vedremo, che è direttamente coinvolto nella grafica e che però, aggiungo anche, si legge nel suo lavoro artistico. Ci sono una serie di modalità di presentazione del suo lavoro che derivano evidentemente da una conoscenza molto approfondita di quelli che sono i meccanismi di presentazione, di lettura, di visione proprio delle immagini, quindi sicuramente questa è una parte importante. Quello che interessa a noi oggi è il Kessels artista. Peraltro il Kessels artista e il Kessels grafico convivono con il Kessels curatore di mostre, quindi in realtà con un'altra parte ancora di lavoro altrettanto importante che potrebbe portarci via probabilmente un'altra giornata di lavoro e di incontri, ma non lo faremo qui. Questo per dire in realtà non tanto che Kessels evidentemente lavora tanto, ma per dire che la sua presenza qui è anche in qualche modo una sorta di punto nodale di quella che è uno dei delle modalità essenziali con i quali noi come comitato scientifico ci siamo posti di fronte a questa edizione di Fotografia Europea, cioè l'idea di davvero fornire una panoramica non solo della fotografia, ma delle fotografie e dei modi di approccio che ci possono essere oggi alla fotografia e soprattutto, vorrei dire, all'immagine. Ecco, questo è, penso, un punto che è già emerso, non so se qualcuno di voi era qui questa mattina, nella conferenza di questa mattina dedicata alla mostra di Palazzo d'Amosto con gli autori che erano qua. Si parlava molto proprio di questa commistione sostanzialmente tra un'idea di fotografia tradizionale e un'idea invece di fotografia quale è quella che oggi tutti un po' viviamo, molto più vicina a un concetto più allargato di immagine. Ecco, Kessels da questo punto di vista è stato davvero uno dei precursori. Non è questione di fare le gare chi arriva prima o chi arriva dopo, insomma l'arte e la cultura non sono il Giro d'Italia, però indubbiamente è un fatto che Kessels sia tra quanti hanno individuato con maggiore lucidità, aggiungendo anche della grande ironia, peraltro, proprio alcune di queste tematiche collegate al mondo delle immagini. Questo naturalmente poi si ricollega anche ai temi al tema vero e proprio di questa manifestazione, quindi effetto terra, e vedremo alcune cose che hanno davvero un legame stretto con questa strana ormai interpretazione della natura che abbiamo noi, con questo strano rapporto che abbiamo con la natura e con alcuni dei suoi elementi, questa idea di addomesticarla, di trovarcisi in mezzo e se non c'è di costruirla. E via dicendo. Quindi tanti sono i temi che appaiono nel lavoro di Kessels e che appariranno anche in questa nostra giornata, in questo nostro incontro. Io devo dire personalmente sono davvero molto onorato e lo dico pubblicamente, ma l'ho già detto e l'ho già scritto. Io credo che uno dei suoi lavori che vedremo qui, 24 ore di fotografia, sia una delle sintesi migliori in assoluto degli ultimi anni di quello che è il rapporto nostro, di tutti noi, con le immagini oggi. E quindi avere qui Kessels per me è davvero un grande onore. Non aggiungo altro perché so che il racconto suo sarà sicuramente esaustivo, e lascio con grande piacere la parola a Giovanna Calvenzi, che ci racconta un'altra parte dell'interpretazione possibile di questo profilo. Grazie.
È difficile parlare di Erik Kessels, confesso che è tutta la settimana che ci ragiono con grande disperazione e ho tormentato Walter chiedendogli da che parte lo prendiamo, nel senso che io seguo il lavoro di Erik Kessels da lontano da molti anni, così come seguo con grande piacere il lavoro di molti autori olandesi, tra i quali posso come dire, vantarmi di avere degli amici che mi tengono un po' aggiornata su quello che succede, e sono sempre delle cose straordinariamente interessanti. Visto che c'è qui Michele Smargiassi, che ho visto entrare, vorrei rubare una frase che ho letto in Fotocrazia, che mi sembra definisca in un modo impeccabile il lavoro di Erik Kessels. Smargiassi così lo definisce, e gli rubo questa frase che magari voleva dire lui domani. Erik Kessels è editore, gallerista, creativo, collezionista di fotografia orfana e vernacolare. Ed è quest'ultima parte della frase che mi piace enormemente, ossia collezionista di fotografia orfana e vernacolare. Nel senso che io di mestiere faccio prevalentemente il foto editor, e l'idea di cercare, studiare, appropriarsi di immagini che fanno parte del nostro immaginario comune, che non hanno più paternità né maternità, e trasformarli in piccoli oggetti che ci ricordano dei pezzi della nostra storia recente. È una di quelle operazioni geniali che mi affascinano continuamente. Ad ogni festival ai quali sono andata, dove c'erano questi piccoli bookshop, dove c'erano le pubblicazioni di Kessel Kramers, ero una delle sue acquirenti più affannate. E in realtà, se voi avete tempo e voglia, tutte le risposte che voi potreste cercare le trovate su internet, perché nel sito di Kessel Kramer ci sono le 100 domande alle quali loro rispondono con grande ironia anche verso se stessi, raccontando appunto che questi due signori si sono conosciuti nel 1995 e hanno creato una sorta di, non so come definirla, una società di comunicazione, però è estremamente riduttivo definire in questo modo l'attività veramente poliedrica alla quale loro si dedicano, che è un'attività che investe anche non solo delle progettazioni di tipo più personale, ironiche, eccetera, ma investe anche, credo che non lo vedremo oggi, ma investe anche la pubblicità, investe anche tutta una serie di campi che tradizionalmente vengono affrontati con un diverso rigore e con certamente una molto minore ironia. Io credo che io mi ero preparata anche tutta una serie di domande di rivolgere a Erik Kessels, che rimanderei a dopo, come mi fa segno astutamente Guadagnini, perché siamo tutti curiosissimi di vedere quello che ci racconterà lui e quello che ci proietterà lui.
Thank you very much, both, for a great introduction. Yeah, as they all already said, I'm not going to talk now about the work from the agency and the more communication work and the curating, but more about my passion for photography and how it also came to, how that started. I mean, it is strongly related also to my work as an art director, because as an art director you work constantly with images during the day. They are not your images, because like myself, I'm not a photographer myself. I'm as much a photographer as you are, or everybody on the street nowadays. But for me, it's always been very pleasurable to work with photographs of other people, and that's what I do also during the day. But especially this interest for vernacular photography existed also, or came to me, because in advertising and design, images are always very perfect, and they try to be as perfect as possible. And I really hate that. I hate advertising anyway, because, and it's very funny because I work in it, but for me that's also the passion to make something different out of it. But as I said, like, those images are very perfect, and I always try to find kind of an imperfection in imagery, because I think it's more interesting. And so that's why my interest for vernacular photography started. And I also try to, I found these images often on markets or on internet. And I'm just going to show you some works that I did with that. First of all, to start with a project called, where that in a way came all together, a project called Album Beauty. And this is, was a book and an exhibition that I first started in Foam in Amsterdam. And this was basically made because the family album was always like a physical object. And this album, I think we have worked, or we have lived about 80 years with the family album, or 80 or 90 years. And now that's almost totally finished. And I mean, there are family albums existing online, of course, but the physical album is very rarely still around. And I made in Foam an exhibition where I really did it as an installation, so not a classical showing the albums, but more like almost as if the visitors were visiting the inside of an album and walk through. They could walk through an album, they could touch the pictures themselves, and there were also pictures made as a carpet where you could walk over, or big cutouts where you could stick your head in, or and mainly the exhibition had the routing through the exhibition was almost a routing through the kind of the sequence of family albums that people make, because now on average people had about 10 albums or something, and mostly the first album was about meeting a person and having a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and they photographed each other many times. And then, of course, the second album was the marriage, the third album was the children, and it went on. And the children, for instance, was an excessive moment where people photographed children. I will show you in a minute, but these are some shots from the exhibition. And also it was produced with big wallpaper, so I blew up the images to also, I mean, the image had a different origin, and I put them a little bit out of its original context into a new context. So as I said, like, the first album is mostly or the second and the third one is on marriage and on children. Here there is a combination of the two, but mostly like as I said, the third album is very much on a baby being born, especially the first baby. People take a lot of pictures of their first baby, and you see that all over the world. Like sometimes they have even 2 albums of the first baby, and it goes on, and it's almost like the most excessive moment that people take pictures when a first baby is born. Although when they there's also people that can't have any babies, and they have dogs and cats. So they really have an album full of dogs and cats and all of their pets, and they really excessively do this. And this is an album from a family from France who have it totally dedicated to their dogs. And it's like the babies, but then different babies. And then when they can't have children and they can't have pets, then they make like often images of their car, you know, so that it's another one where people passionately take pictures of the car and then show that one. There's of course other kind of behavior in albums because, for instance, this is a Swiss album where people, they do it very precisely. They make like a little line with crayon, write the caption underneath, stick the pictures very straight, underline it with a ruler. And that's what you see often in Austria, Switzerland, Germany, and in other countries, in other parts of the world. For instance, in America, they just do it totally different. They throw everything in, and it's just like a master photo album. And generally, these family albums, they are also pretty boring. I mean, it's like this one is an example of a man who photographed his house, and there were no people in there. It's just like a documentation of this boring house. And other times, I mean, two people go to visit a flower garden, and they take only pictures of flowers, in a way very boring as well. And this one is, for instance, of two girlfriends that went to Benidorm, probably on a holiday, and they couldn't find a boyfriend, so they're bored out of their head, you know, like amusing themselves, but it was already finished after the first day, so they have to spend 2 more weeks together, and then they start to take pictures of each other, looking very miserable. This one is a man who photographed his wife with a blue umbrella constantly, the whole day with the blue umbrella. Very awkward. And you have also very personal albums, like this is a guy who had a much younger girlfriend, and he was fascinated about her body, of course. And yeah, it was a huge album full of pictures of her. Then there's strange kind of behavior. This is a mother and her son, and they start to do a little photo play, you know, like sitting in the same position constantly. There's, of course, single images in the albums that are very interesting as well, like because when there was a physical print, people didn't throw it away because it was so precious in a way, like a print. Even when there was like a development stain on there, or like here, they just stuck it in an album. And for me, it's quite interesting because these are kind of mistakes, and they in a way they look beautiful. Often how a picture decays is also quite interesting. And here there are two images with an ink stain on there. And also this was for that album beauty. I blew it up very big, and then suddenly you have a kind of a new experience with that image again. Like cracks in images, always, yeah, mostly in a very interesting places, of course. Overexposed images. And there's also the classic camera strap in front of the lens. So that's something you don't see, but then when you make pictures the whole day, you have this camera strap in front of the lens. And very annoying when you get the pictures back, but they still end up in a family album because there's still a little bit to see from the holiday. Then there's, of course, mutilations in pictures, and people that didn't want some other people to be in the album anymore, so they brutally cut them out, and they were erased in a brutal way from the album. Here as well, you know, like some kind of family member that was unwanted anymore, that was not wanted anymore. And funny pictures like this one. And yeah, it's kind of strange. You see it every now and then in an album. I think one of my favorite ones is this one, because it's like a woman who got probably divorced, and she cut herself out of the wedding picture, but her arm was behind her husband, so she left a little part of the arm of her husband on there, and then, I mean, it's nowadays you see a lot of artists who make this kind of work, but this is just done by an amateur, and that's what I generally like in these images, because they had never the intention to be beautiful or also especially not the intention to end up on the wall in a gallery or in a book. So it was just like a private thing, because that is something that totally changed, of course, because like a family album was only for a very private use. I mean, there were not a lot of eyes looking at the album. Nowadays, of course, it's totally changed, because an image is much more there to share, and it has a very short life cycle, an image, and it's for everybody there to see. In addition to this album beauty, I did a different exhibition, was called Mother Nature, and this was a kind of a typology that I found also in many albums, because many men traditionally the man was the photographer with an analog camera, and he took pictures of his wife, but then men have had this kind of urge or need to take pictures of their wife in front of nature or in front of beautiful flowers, as if she needed it. I mean, why would he do that? But you see it all over the world, that people put their wife in the flowers or in the nature. And from all different times, but she's like planted in front of flowers. Sometimes she's a bit pushed on the side of the edge of the frame, and sometimes her posture is a little bit covered by flowers, with this one. And sometimes it's kind of awkward photographs that you see, but done with a lot of love. Here you hardly see the other one. It's almost camouflaged behind the flowers. And this girl is like really planted just in there, and it's very difficult for her to get out of the bush. But so I did the installation of this in a museum, which was quite difficult as well, because the plants and flowers are often not allowed into a museum. So these were like specially prepared flowers and plants. And it was an installation where I printed the photographs, put them on sticks like in a botanical garden, and then pinned them in between the other or in between the plants. And this was in a museum in Germany, in a Folkwang Museum in Essen. So here it's also, again, for me, it's interesting how these images get a second and a third life, and how people look at them again, and how they react to them. And I don't make it for myself, but almost more for the public that looks at it and how they react to it. Yeah, so that is more an introduction into the general works that I do with pictures from albums. Later I come more to works when I find really interesting stories and sequences of images and what I do with that. But first I just want to show a little bit about the project that I did for the city, for the festival, for Reggio Emilia. And this in a way came because there was an invitation to make something here, but I was kind of open to come up with something within the theme of this year. But then I got sent images from the archive of the city, and I suddenly saw like a photo on there with a Topolino on there, which of course is was a very common car here in Italy for you. But my father, he was very fanatic about these Topolinos, because he kind of restored, he was busy with the 5th car, and he had restored already 4 of these cars, and that was his hobby. And so on every car he worked maybe 2 or 3 years. He bought it quite cheap and then really fixed the car and made every part himself almost. And And my father, he suffered from a stroke in the end of 2013. So the fifth car was still in his workshop and was not finished. And it's also, I mean, my father can't speak or move anymore, so he's still there, and he is he recognizes everything, but I mean, he's definitely not going to finish that car again. So there, the idea came from to do something with that car in Reggio Emilia. I just have a short film where he is also practicing on the car when he restored the motor, he would always drive on there without all the stuff around it. That's quite funny. So, yeah, and he documented in a way all the stages of this restoration. And I didn't know that he did this in such a precise way. Only when I started with this idea, I looked at his photographs and on his albums that he made, and also his hard disks that he had with all the images on there. So he documented like the restoration, always very precise. And in a way, there are beautiful images when you take them again out of their context. For him, they had just like a useful purpose because he wanted to see how it was going on. And yeah, then there is, for instance, this is a sequence which is you find also in the exhibition where he just started to remake the steering wheel. So he wanted to make a wooden steering wheel. So he patched a new steering wheel with wood, and then slowly made it more concrete and more finished. And then, but he would always take pictures in the kitchen or in the garden with that steering wheel, and to see the progression of it. And yeah, so here it's almost finished, and this one is then the ready steering wheel, which is also in the car now. And then, yeah, I started to make drawings with the, also how we would use the space here in Reggio Emilia. And that's how I mostly prepare the exhibitions, just with renderings, and then you can see in 3D how it also works. And there was a separate space apart from the synagogue where the idea was to ask people from Reggio Emilia to send their image from their Topolino that they owned a long time ago. That was in their family album, and that's what you see in the back of the space. Now here is the kind of the finished installation of the unfinished car. And yeah, it works perfectly. I mean, I've never had such a nice merge between an idea and the space. And in this case, to me, it's very touching how that works, and also that the car was brought from my father's workshop here, and that it kind of belongs here now. Yeah, that's more the idea on a short description why I did this. And yeah, here you see some pictures from the backspace where I used the pictures from the people from Reggio Emilia, and also produced that as wallpapers, and made a layout of it in those spaces in the back of the synagogue. So here again, it's I mean, I didn't plan to make this project before I got the invitation, but it's quite nice how all these things came together in this way. So there was also a book produced, so I thought the book is also nice when the book is unfinished. So there's pictures, more pictures in of that my father took, and there's also pages with stickers because you can finish the book yourself, and yeah, that's always nice. I made like 500 of them quite quickly before the exhibition, so it's quite nice to have that with a photograph of the exhibition in it. Oh yeah, and then there's a short film, and maybe you have seen it already, but I just wanted to show it because people from the festival made it. A short film where you can see how that installation got together. Yeah, then I moved to a subject of more photography, the photographs that we live with nowadays. I mean, I got the last few years quite fascinated by the fact that, I mean, now we live with, before lunch, anybody has seen already more images on a half a day before lunch than somebody living in the 18th century in his whole life. So, I mean, we are bombarded with photographs every day, and in a way also, yeah, people become much more editors than they used to be. I mean, nowadays you have to choose really what you like to see, when you want to see it, and everybody's much more, everybody became a much more better photographer, and in quantity we take much more images. And also in selecting them, people, even amateurs, become quite good nowadays. But there were, I mean, my fascination was like maybe I can show once physically with how many images we live every day. So I downloaded 24 hours of photographs from Flickr, from this photo site, and then I printed them for real. In the end, there were 950,000 images, and they were all printed, and then just dumped in a museum, and people could walk through them and just touch them, pick them up. And you would also see that first people got quite overwhelmed by the installation of it, but yeah, later people got also very, I mean, it's very personal because you walk over babies that are born, and very personal memories, and it gives also a sense of how there is a big blur between private and public nowadays. I mean, there's no definite edge between there anymore, or definite wall between there anymore. It's very much, yeah, it's a vague line between private and public nowadays. So the installation had, in that sense, different purposes. And then I did it, the installation also in other places. This was last year in Switzerland, in a church. And you see also how it then yeah, works also in less white cube kind of spaces, but more in certain existing spaces. Almost better than in a museum. And yeah, so that is called 24 hours of photos. Additionally to that, I made an installation. It's called My Feet. So I downloaded kind of these foot selfies, people call them. So when you, for instance, type in "I'm bored" on Google, you find a lot of pictures that people take of their feet because they're bored. So they take pictures of their feet because they have nothing else to do. And also I translated My Feet in many different languages, and I found in the end 2,500, and which to me is still not so much, but that was all I could find. And then on the floor I took pictures that people took from the top down, and on the wall There would be pictures where, you can see it here, where that people take on the beach when they are sitting on the beach, and then take it more horizontally, the picture. So here as well, you could walk in there and step on other people's feet. And it was also, here the relation of people being in that installation and looking at it. Yeah, another project has not so much to do with photography, but that was like a request I got to come up with an idea how people can be more involved with the public in musea. And here, I found out that people on average only look 9 seconds to a painting in a museum, like all over the world. And then I found out that in a sports school, where in a gym where people go to, that they look on average for 20 minutes to a TV screen and look at the soap while they're running on a treadmill. So I thought it's nice to combine these two extremes. And so I had like 16 works in a museum by Willem de Kooning, Joseph Beuys, Warhol, Stella. So and people just ran in front of them on a treadmill, and then they had a headphone on with certain stories about that work. It was also, of course, a provocation, but it just opens the eyes for people to spend more time at one work. Yeah, another hobby we kind of combined with a few people is we brought it together in the magazine Useful Photography, because a lot of my friends like Hans van der Meer, Hans Aarsman, Julian Germain, they since 12 years or so we were collectors of photography that came from kind of semi-professional photographers. So for instance, people that make brochures or technical books or that kind of photography. And there have been now 12 issues, but I'll show 2 of them. And mostly here it's also that we see that photography every day, or most of that photography, but we don't know the names of the photographers, so they are quite anonymous. So in this case, with Useful Photography, we like to just point out that kind of photography again. In this case, it's that was number 5. It was totally filled with daughters of this cow on the cover, and the cow is called Lord Lily, and he gave sperm like 4 times a week. And over 12 years, he produced more than 150,000 children. So in the magazine, we have a big amount of his daughters, of Lord Lily. And here you see how they are in every country. There is a cow photographer. Like, believe it or not, but there's at least one cow photographer. And he always documents the cows in exactly the same way. So all over the world, cows are shot in this way, because there's a little bit of grass underneath the first 2 legs. That's just to straighten the back of the cow. And the cow is always held in the same way at his head. And only the background changes, but for the rest, the cow is always photographed in exactly the same way. And it's almost like how Bernd and Hila Becher made these typologies. Here you see that kind of semi-professional photographers also make these kind of typologies. And I have like a short film about how the Dutch photographer is like working, because it's a very long and frustrating job to photograph a cow, because the animal doesn't stand still, and so you will see it's quite a strange job.
Moedersvader is een bolletje als... Nee, het is een bolletje. En die andere moedersvader is een bolletje. Rechts voor naar voren toe. Rechts voor ietsjes achteruit. Iets naar buiten toe. Kan de voorkant van het blokje ietsjes gras bovenop gooien? Oké. Start erbij, auto toe.
Yeah, so he has his car there, because when the cow is in the perfect position, he puts a cassette tape in the car with cow sounds, and then the cow is even more concentrated.
Die is een beetje in de geboren iets dan doen. Nee, mama. Hij zit hier voor mij hoor. Hij maakt wel eens op een minuut. Ik heb hem achter het geschoven. Ik blijf even staan, dan zou ik even de band stakken. Dan loop je recht hierin.
Here's the end result. It takes half an hour. Yeah, this is another issue, and it's all about photographs that we found on pornographic websites. And these are the photographs almost like the warming up photographs. So you don't see any action, but you see that the talent, they call them talent, that they kind of do a little bit of acting, you know, like they do a little bit of a role play. And of course, everybody knows what's going to happen after that. But in a way, these pictures are more interesting than the pictures that follow, because they're so stupid that, I mean, and the whole book is filled then with photographs where you don't see any sexual activities, because there's a lot of, yeah, like birthday parties and decoration parties, and I mean, they all get really, yeah, it's interesting to see them also out of its context and then put them all together. Of course, there's also the classic pizza delivery scene, like on the right it says big sausage pizza. And I mean, it's all true, of course. I mean, these are big stereotypes. And here there's, for instance, quite interesting, I think, it's a woman in a red dress pouring water over herself with a coffee can. I mean, why would she do that? But it's an interesting picture. Huh? So, yeah, for us it's fascinating to find these subjects and then totally, yeah, like go completely into them and then try to find as much images as possible. But we, up till now, we did 12 issues. We make every year one issue. And yeah, it's quite a niche thing. I think we print 1,000 to 1,500 copies. And but it's more like a platform to show these images and of photographers that are in a way anonymous. This is a more recent book I did when I visited Beijing. I did that together with Thomas Sauvin, which is also has a similar kind of passion as me for found and vernacular photography. And this was we found in one album on that we found on a flea market there. We found like pictures of a woman standing in front of a television, because in the 50s and 60s, when the television arrived well, now it's even later probably, but I mean, at a certain moment the television arrived in China, and for them it was of course a big status symbol. So you see from that period of time that a lot of people take pictures in front of their television. But this was a kind of interesting series, because I mean, here the guy took many pictures of his wife in front of the television, but she always stood in exactly the same way. When you look at her pink, you know, she's always like this. But she's always wearing different outfits. And it's over a period of time because the photographs also look different. I mean, it's almost unbelievable, but and there are only 8 images, so we made a small book about it. And the funny thing is also that, for instance, Japanese people, they used to take a lot of pictures, but there's many pictures, they always take them landscape. But there's only in a few cases that they take them just vertical. And that's like when there's a new TV, or when there's even more when there's a new refrigerator in the house. You know, you have these long refrigerators, then you have to turn the camera. So it's quite funny to find these kind of behaviors in the images. Oh, there's even more. Yeah, and a very recent book I did is called Shining in Absence. And here I try to take like the fact that I looked at these family albums quite a lot, I try to take that even more into extreme, because it's quite interesting sometimes in albums that are totally empty, or that are where the pictures have been removed, to read the captions and almost, yeah, they become almost like abstracts. So I was looking for, this is a whole book, like with quite a lot of pages filled with, yeah, it's a photography book in a way, all about photography, but it has no photograph at all. There's not a single photograph in this book, and but you feel the presence of photographs in them. So there's, for instance, this one says sport in the snow, or take a peek, look at my adorable grandchildren. And yeah, pictures of the pages, the empty pages, become almost like abstracts. Here there was like a picture that got wet and then got taken out, so there's certain remains of the picture in the album. And then I did also an exhibition, like a photographic exhibition without any photograph. It's quite nice to see how far you can push that. I'm not sure if this works, but at least I tried it. Yeah, so and it ends with the last picture, and then on the right you see there an empty page which says the end. Okay, and then I come to a section where I made, in 2001, I made the first book with the title In Almost Every Picture, because this was in a way also the start that I was finding interesting photographs, but especially interesting photo series, where almost amateurs made kind of stories in their family albums, but that without even knowing, and sometimes they were not aware of that. And it started with this book, or with this photo series that I found on the market in Barcelona. And these were like square 6x6 slides, and they were all very beautifully descripted. And so it started to rain there, and they were like openly lying there. So I just took all of them, 400. I didn't even look at them. And at home I started to look at them, and turned out that 99% of the images, there was this woman on there, beautifully photographed over a course of 12 years. And always like in a very beautiful way, like here she has a rose in her mouth. I mean, he must have taken that rose and took a picture of her. Also, there was a lot of bathing suits in the pictures, maybe 20 different outfits are in the books. And always very prominent and very, I mean, there was a kind of a love relationship going on between them, very dedicated. And yeah, many images of her. But then I started to edit them in time, because on the slides there was also the dates. And then I found out the longer he took pictures of her, the smaller she came in the picture. So, I mean, there was more distance between the photographer and his subject. This maybe had to do that, I mean, the photographer maybe lost interest in its subject, which is quite painful, of course. But maybe he had also more eye for the surrounding. And because, I mean, the last picture in the book is this one, where she almost disappeared. I mean, she's very far away. But it says also something about our relationship with the camera and how we document our lives. And I mean, in the end, I found also after this, I found in many albums that when a woman gets older, there's more distance. I mean, she's not photographed close up anymore. I mean, everybody can think about that, what they like, but it's like a fact. When I made the book, I thought, like, who is this woman? So I thought maybe when I go back to Barcelona, I can discover her. And so I sent like a press release, and the newspapers, they were trying to help, and they called her Senora X or La Mujer Misteriosa. And they were also they thought it's funny that somebody from Holland picks up the pictures here and then comes back and tries to find this woman. And in the end, there was an older woman coming to the gallery, and she said that she knew this woman because she worked with her in a telephone company. And the name of the woman on the pictures was Josefina Iglesias. And her husband was a doctor. That also showed that he had like a Rolleiflex or a big square size camera. And she died about 5 years before, and her husband died quite soon after. So that also showed that there is a certain, for me that made like the circle around. But then afterwards also, I mean, I'm interested in the second and the third and the fourth life of this. So for instance, Agnes B made clothing with the pictures on. And I mean, often you see also then when these images end on a market, there is no evidence of family anymore. And in this case also with Josefina, it was clear on the images that they had no children because there were never children in the pictures. So when both of them died and they had no family probably, then these pictures just disappear in a way, and they are sold. Another book in that series, because I started to get more and more interested in finding these kind of stories in vernacular photography, and there was this non-identical twin, also from Barcelona, funny enough, but I found these images in Brussels on a market. And here you saw, like in an album, many pictures of the two sisters that one head bigger than the other, and but many different outfits and sets of outfits. And this was also during the war, like 1941, which makes it also quite strange because it looked very rich and very. You see them constantly together. And then at a certain moment, they get like a boyfriend, yeah. And but you don't know whose boyfriend it is because he stands in the middle, and then he's constantly there. And but then the next picture I found in that series is he becomes a soldier, and that's like in 1944 or something. And then the next image that I found after this one was this one. And then for the following years, you would always see only the smaller one of the two twins. You would see only the smaller one on the images. But funny enough, always standing either left or right of the image, but leaving almost like a imaginary space for her sister. I mean, I don't know if this is intentional, but it was strange that it was always, I didn't crop these images, but she would always stand on one side of the frame. Yeah, more funny subjects. I mean, I found this online. It's a Japanese amateur photography that had a photo blog, like quite early in 1994, 95. So just at the start of internet, was one of the first photo blogs. And he has this rabbit, and it was called Oolong. And the Oolong was very good to balance everything on his head. I mean, every day when I would go to the website, you would see another picture, and it really made your day, you know, like in the morning I uploaded the website, saw another image, and then I went to work. And I mean, it were more crazy every day. And he was a fantastic balancer. And but it was kind of, I thought these images were very artistic in a way, but they were never intended like that. It was just like to show that he could still do this. I mean, it's a beautiful image, I think. Huh? And he's very good in balancing, the guy. He's like, there's no Photoshop involved here. And then at a certain moment, you would see that he suddenly didn't have anything on his head anymore because he became a bit sick, Oolong. And you could follow that also every day, how the progression of his sickness. And then one day I saw this picture, and oh. And but then I thought, okay, this is the end of it. But then the next day I went to the website again, and I found this one. And but this is like these are two carrots. It's not like his ears. It's so it's almost like a tombstone for his grave. And but this shows beautiful. Also, the narrative in the book goes from very funny and hilarious to very sad at the end. And I think it's very touching how people. I mean, I contacted the photographer and then made the book together with him, and he was very happy about that. Another book is I mean, for me it was more interesting to see the narrative in these books, and the books are kind of novel-sized books, and they have they have a little bit of explanation in the back, but for the rest they are only images, and the people that go through the book, they have to make the story themselves. In this case, it's a woman from Holland, from a small town in Holland, and I heard of her, and her name is Ria, and Ria started in 1936. She started to shoot in a shooting gallery. I don't know if you have that in Italy, but in a shooting gallery on a fun fair, you can shoot at a target, and when you hit the bullseye, it takes an automated picture of you. And Ria was 16 here. And then every year after, she shot a picture of herself. She didn't shoot in the war between 40 and 46. Other people were shooting, but after that she started again, and in a way it's like she documented her life by shooting herself. And you see in a way the whole history of photography in these images. And then it came to Polaroid, black and white, color Polaroid, and you see her slowly getting older. You see the film types getting younger. And at a certain moment, you see also her walking stick lying in front of her. And then on every picture, you see another walking stick every year. And I made this book like together. I got her pictures, and she got really the ideas of the book. And here was the final picture with her and the book. She lives in an elderly home. And she's now 95 years old, still shooting. But then when the book came out, there was an interest of the Contemporary Art Museum in Amsterdam because they called me and they said, like, we want to buy all her pictures, the originals. And I did some negotiation for Ria, and it was quite a lot of money for her And then when she also called me when the deal was done, and when she got the money, she called me and she said like, Erik, the ship has arrived. She got the money. And then what happened is that Ria started to really kind of spend the money. Because she had to, I mean, she didn't know if she could, if she would survive the money. So she did bus trips with the elderly home. She did like multiple dinners, and so I and went also on the exhibitions that were made. Here it says like in England they called her the woman who shoots herself. And so this is on one of the dinners. It's actually, yeah, so constantly she said like, Erik, you have to come for another dinner, and I invite people. And and then she spent all the money, and now it's finished. And but she had a fantastic few years. And so for me it's also nice to, when the people are still alive that I make the books of, yeah, it's very nice to keep contact with them, and to, I mean, the story is very nice that her work is now in the collection of a contemporary art museum. So that's I think very nice. Another book in that series I did is in a way with this kind of famous failure in photography, which is the finger in front of the lens. So, but funny then to exhibit them again in an exhibition. It was. I mean, it's quite nice that you almost make, in this case I made a very classic exhibition in a classic gallery or in a museum, and then, but then with these horrible mistake pictures. And so the narrative, these were 13 pictures, and first there's a little bit of the finger coming in, and then while you walk past the pictures, more and more a finger is coming in. And then at the very end, it's almost the whole finger is in front of the lens. So it become very nice abstract paintings almost. This is the last book I did in that series, and it's I got from somebody about 100 pictures, 100 Polaroids of people on the beach. All the pictures were taken on the beach, these Polaroids, but in all of the Polaroids there was a big hole in there. And very strange, you know, like beautiful pictures, but there was nobody on there, and a big hole in the Polaroid. And you think, like, why is this? And in the end, I found out that it's this was made by a photographer in Portugal in the 80s, and he took pictures on the beach, but then he had like a clipper with him, like a machine to cut a hole in it. And he sold the inside as buttons for the people at the beach. So he made like badges, and this was the garbage in a way that he threw away. And but this also says something about. I think that these images are in a way more interesting than when the image would be complete. But I mean, in this way, it's a fantastic image, I think. Yeah, then 2 more books to finish with. This one is in a way a book about one of the biggest mysteries in photography, and that's how to shoot my black dog. I mean, and this is like a family who is fighting against the fact that they can't take pictures of their black dog. And I mean, it's so frustrative that they keep on trying it, and every time it's like a black phantom. And so they also decide to have a black sofa, which is not very smart, I can tell you, because, I mean, it's very, it doesn't work like this, photography. And also outside, also a big failure. And, I mean, he had a little bit of white on his feet, and that was the only thing you saw. But even in the bright sunlight, they didn't manage to take a nice picture of the dog, which was it's quite stupid. Yeah, like things like this, like one big black blob on the pictures. But in the end, I found one image in that album where they probably were so frustrated that they started to overexpose the images. And that's this one. So finally, they made it. Yeah, so that says also a lot about how people fight with this camera and try to document their family. The last book is, this is like some pictures on how I show sometimes the images. This was in San Francisco in a kind of an overview in a museum called Pier 24. And this is the last book, and these people, they had not a lot of problems taking pictures of each other, because this is almost similar to the first book with that Josefina, the Spanish woman, but here it's a woman called Valerie, and she's from Florida, and her husband is called Fred, and Fred is the photographer. Fred has a kind of a strange hobby. Maybe it doesn't sound so strange in the beginning because Fred likes to take pictures of Valerie, but then he likes to take them in the water. Always Valerie is in the water. And here, this was an image from 1980 where it was still quite normal. But then he started to experiment, and Valerie had to keep her clothes on, and her clothes had to get a little bit wet. And so she went deeper and deeper into the water. Here it became already quite obscene. And then also at night she went into a public fountain and he flashed the images. And for them it's, they call it like or wet cloth adventure. And for them it's like a fantastic way to show that this enormous amount of freedom that they have, that they can go every moment of the day, that they can become wet and can go into the water. And they think when you wear bathing suits under your clothes, it's kind of cheating. But sometimes it goes a little bit wrong, it's a bit frisky, sexual. But also when it rains, it's for them it's fantastic. They love it when it rains, because then they go out. And Fred is not a bad photographer. He can make really nice pictures, I think. I think this image, there's a lot of photographers who would love to take this picture, I think, because it's truly disturbing and confusing. They use also their own swimming pool, of course, a lot, and more public fountains. Of course, when they do the garden, they wet the garden, then Valerie also wets herself. And in the winter, they take pictures, like in their own swimming pool again. Awkward images, I think. And sometimes, Valerie dresses up to the maximum. She does lipstick, her jewelry, the handbag, everything is on there. And this one is beautiful, I think. It's kind of a modern picture, modern version of Ophelia, but then taken a few years ago in Florida. I think it's a very beautiful picture. And then I made the book. I contacted them because I found these images on Flickr. I had dialogues with them, and they like to do this because they, of course, like to show their photographs. And then I thought, now is my time, because I think I made the book, but then I asked them, I sent you the first copies of the book, or I sent one copy, and I printed it on plastic, but I didn't tell them. The book was waterproof, but I didn't tell them, and I said, you can take the book in the water. I'll send more of them, it doesn't matter, just take it in the water, because it would be nice if Valerie is with the book in the water. And so then they did that, but then Fred, he sent me an email, and it's this one. He said hello Erik, I've sent a dozen of photos from our afternoon book swim, and I hope they meet what is needed for publicity photos. I've Photoshop touched them up for good presentations. I shot well over 100 views, and these are the best. The shoot went well, and we were both in the mood. There was a light overcast as hoped for, with no harsh shadows. And Valerie wanted to know if the book was really to go into the water. I said yes, of course. The book slipped down into the water a little bit at a time, Valerie taking it and herself in deeper as the photos progressed. Eventually, it was fully under. We enjoyed the tantalizing intrigue of it. Okay, and then after the photo sequence, we both swam with the book, looking again at each picture. The water was not seeming to have any effect on it. We must have enjoyed 2 hours in the water with it. I rinsed it off in the house, dried off each page, and placed paper towels between each page. But the book seems to have withstood the lengthy adventure just fine. Loved the whole business, Fred and Valerie. And then these were the pictures. I mean, there were many pictures that they sent, but I think this one was the nicest one, so I picked this one for the publicity of the book. And then, of course, I sent them more books, and I kept in contact, and still keep in contact with them. Then, of course, I thought this was like the end of it, because I thought this image like finalizes it. But then it's nice to, sometimes you get an invitation to exhibit somewhere. So this was like in the Lake of Genève, in the neighborhood of Lausanne. And here there was the canvas floating on the Lake of Genève, a quite big canvas. That was last summer. And then also in that city, Valerie was very present. I asked them if they were both invited also to come to the festival, but they said they had no time because they had another shoot. So it's kind of disappointing, I think, because I arranged that they could come, but then... here you see the presence of Valerie in that town. You really see her everywhere, because there's also in the fountain, there was like a bassin with water, and so I put these huge pictures in the fountain, and these were images where she was like, almost a photograph would produce the fountain then. And so I thought, okay, now is the end of it, but it still continued, because then I suddenly found on the internet that Stella McCarthy, who was a fashion company, a fashion designer, she copied the book cover of Valerie totally for her own campaign. I mean, it's clearly that this is a rip-off of the book cover. So I thought, like, okay, I sent these pictures to Fred, like the photographer, the author of the photographs. And I thought maybe he's very furious and he will go to a lawyer to, fight Stella McCarthy. But then he wrote me this email. He said, like, we see the Stella photos. She does look a bit starched, not enjoying the adventure. Sort of makes one wonder why she would be doing it to start with. I would hope she would get satisfaction in eventually taking the whole outfit under. Thank you very much. No, I'm not tired, no. Just getting warmed up.
Bene, io ringrazio moltissimo Erik per questa presentazione. Come vi dicevo, per l'appunto non c'era bisogno davvero delle nostre parole, anche perché capite bene adesso anche perché vi ho presentato questo artista anche nelle altre sue versioni appunto di curatore, di studioso di grafico, perché effettivamente poi si capisce che tutte queste cose confluiscono nella sua poetica e anche in questi racconti. Ecco, c'è questa parte di narratore che a me mancava, che è davvero notevole. Beh, io per l'appunto continuo a non aggiungere altro. Non so, Giovanna prima parlava di qualche domanda che aveva in serbo, forse possiamo dare via noi se poi qualcuno vuole aggiungersi.
A me interessava molto anche questa idea di un lavoro comune con altre persone, cioè l'aver creato una specie di staff, perché per esempio quando si parla di libri una delle domande frequenti è: posso venire a farmi fare un libro da voi? E la risposta è no, noi ci facciamo i nostri libri. Quindi mi interessava molto capire come funziona la vostra organizzazione che produce questi oggetti di creazione.
Yeah, I mean basically the company we started in 1996, and it's. I mean, I work in design and advertising, and I worked for many years also in other companies. So in '96 we decided, my partner and me, to start ourselves. But then one of the main things were also, okay, when we can decide ourselves who we like to work for, or eventually then, maybe it's also very nice that we can kind of include our hobbies into our work, or combine our hobbies into our work. And that's always what we did a little bit on the side of things. So, for instance, with the books, I mean, for instance, my partner Johan, he was very much into film, so he did a lot of things in that. And I was more into photography and art, and I had the urge already since an early age, and I made a long time already books as a physical object, and then I sometimes did it with a publisher, but it was very unfulfilling because, yeah, there was never a very good relationship. So in the end, we thought, like, for instance, with these useful photography and in almost every picture, it's better to do it ourselves. And also other people in the office, they also make sometimes books. But yeah, I mean, we call ourselves then, I mean, we publish them, but yeah, we're not going to publish books by other people. We sometimes design and edit books for other people, but we're not publishing them. So you can come with a book that we design or edit, but we won't publish it then. Sorry. Yeah, because otherwise I'm also lost, because I like it so much that I would love to do many books with many people, but then I think yeah, then I have no life anymore.
Ci sono domande da lì, scusate, ma io ho un faro in faccia per cui non vi vedo più di tanto. Quindi chiedevo se ci sono domande dalla platea, dal pubblico, se ci sono curiosità, altri aneddoti possibili che volete sentire.
You can also do it in Italian, eh?
Yes. Andiamo avanti da qui, poi vediamo. Com'è il lavoro di ricerca? Cioè, questo è un materiale che noi vediamo finito, ma tutto il lavoro degli album beauty è un lavoro anche di ricerca. Ecco, c'è una parte di collezionista nel tuo lavoro, che è una parte importante, no?
Yeah, I think to be clear, I mean, I collect, of course, a lot of images, but I don't see myself as a collector, because I think collecting is also something, yeah, that it's almost something compulsive or yeah, like totally pragmatic. And but for me, I collect the material, and then I see it more as a resource, like so that where I can make these new projects out of, and that's for me. Yeah, I mean, many people sometimes ask that question, like, yeah, how do you do that? But I mean, for me, I do that also already quite long. So yeah, there's a lot of weekends and a lot of evenings, and but it's just like, for me, it's always been fun. And but I mean, in the end, nowadays and in the beginning, when I started to make these books, it was fascinating for me how people reacted on it. So then I started to be more and more involved in that, like how you could reappropriate an existing image, or yeah, in this case, in the festival, the images of my father, that of course they were never meant to be printed and framed, but in this installation it makes then suddenly sense. So for me, I see it. I mean, and that's nowadays you see many photographers and artists using existing material, or using the internet as a source. I mean, and that's also what you see nowadays, much more present in the world of photography, because there are so many images around, like why would you not use them and do something to them, and yeah.
Io ricordo di aver visto la mostra dedicata a Ria, che spara con il fucile ad Arles, e già allora aveva preso contatto con lei e sapeva come finiva la storia? È una domanda.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it started that I heard from her, and through a local journalist, because sometimes the local news, they photographed her or they filmed her at the fun fair, because it was in that town a little bit of an attraction, this woman. And then I visited her, and then I made the book. And after that, people asked if they could have the works as an exhibition. And then, I mean, the time when you saw it in Arles, I took Ria with me, and she was also there. And I mean, and she enjoyed herself very much. She took like a plastic rifle in the luggage, also with her. So because she wanted always a rifle with her. So I mean, and at Schiphol, at the how you call that, where they check your luggage, help me. Yeah, they said like, what's happening and why, and so I had to show the book and I explained it, and they said like, okay, go. But it was very funny, like to travel with her, and I like that. I mean, it's also the living. She was like a living object or subject of that photographs, and also I think also that. I mean, she never had a husband, and she never had children, was never married, and also never had a photo camera, actually. She still doesn't have a photo camera. So these were also the only photographs she had. And in the album with all the Polaroids, there was 1 year that she was ill when the fun fair was. And then friends of her visited her in the hospital because she was in a hospital bed, but they brought a rifle and they put it to her, gave it to her, and then they took a picture with her with the rifle in the bed. And so yeah, there's many facets of those stories. Yeah.
C'è qualcuno che... Eccoli, pronti. Eccolo là, arriva anche il microfono.
Qualche anno fa ho comprato ad Arles uno dei suoi libri, quello col maiale in tutte le foto, e mi sembrava molto divertente, ma non ne ho mai sentito raccontare la storia. Se me la poteva spiegare. Grazie.
Yeah, this is a strange story also. So for the people here, it's like photographs of a restaurant, where a photographer was working in the restaurant because he had a dark room in the basement of the restaurant. And he would take pictures of people at the table, but then there was always a small pig brought to the table, and they took like a picture of the pig and the people on the table. And then you could hold the pig on the tail and also feed the pig with it was a little piglet with a bottle of milk. And it looked kind of brutal because it was almost like, okay, we show you the pig, and then we go to the kitchen, we cook it, and then you get the pig. So that looks kind of brutal, like how they show you a lobster at the table. But this was actually more an attraction of the restaurant, because the chef in the restaurant had a lot of these pigs at home as pets. So he brought them to the restaurant. And then they were, as an attraction there, you could make a picture. And then at the end of the night, when you had dinner, because there was no pig on the menu, you could take that picture as a souvenir. So the book, of course, I saw sometimes 1 or 2 of those pictures, but I could never get more of those pictures, of course, because they were always in the private possession of people in their albums, because they took them. Because the restaurant is not existing anymore, it burned down. It's a restaurant in Montreal, and But then we did a kind of, with somebody that I made the book with in Montreal, we did a public call. If people had those images in their albums and if they could lend them to us so we could scan them. So in the end we had about 120 pictures, and you could see like the history of that restaurant with showing the pig. And yeah. You still happy with the book? Or? Okay, cool. After the story, you're still happy? Okay. Anybody else?
Una domanda ancora da parte mia relativamente a Unfinished Father, che è un lavoro, mi pare, che ha curiosamente due chiavi di lettura che sembrano, due modalità che sembrano opposte, no? Da un lato è il lavoro forse naturalmente più intimo che tu hai fatto, in quanto c'è un riferimento esplicito a una vicenda evidentemente direttamente personale. Dall'altro c'è tutto il lavoro sul topolino che funziona insieme, non è lo stesso lavoro ma funziona insieme, che è invece esplicitamente pubblico, nel senso che le foto che voi vedete del topolino sono arrivate attraverso una chiamata pubblica, insomma come si dice, un coinvolgimento pubblico e una ricerca anche negli archivi, no? della città. Quindi ecco, se ci puoi parlare di questa doppia natura, insomma, in qualche modo di questo lavoro, da un lato estremamente privato, dall'altro estremamente pubblico, il dialogo.
Yeah, I think the two exhibitions are in that way also separate from each other. I mean, they are in the same space, but you have to visit them separately. But I also see it, I see them more as an addition to each other, like because it was not, you know, it was kind of a process how it developed. So first there was the idea with my father, and then there was also, I had to make, I thought it was nice to make a connection with the city, and so. Yeah, that's, I mean, making an exhibition like this, especially for a festival, is always nice because you work with people from the festival, they give you opportunities where you can exhibit, and then from one comes the other. So, funny enough, for instance, in the synagogue, it was not possible to show images with people on there. Funny enough, so I didn't know that, but and the pictures my father made, there was never any person on there. I mean, he just made them of the objects. And in the back room of the synagogue, there you could show people with. So in a way, yeah, it fitted with that. But I mean, about your question, more the private and the public, I think that works quite nicely as a contradiction together. But also, but I mean, for me, it's also very personal to dedicate that to him. But then on the other hand, I have to admit that apart from that, then there is also more the professional or artistic thing than to try to make that very communicative so that people almost, when they walk through it, that they can see that as a metaphor for life, which maybe, yeah, like in films and in all kinds of media, they tell you that life ends always beautiful and there's a happy ending. But in a way, this shows also an abrupt stop to something, which is unfinished. So, yeah, you could also see that as a relationship that is unfinished, but also his work as a passion that was unfinished. So but it's never a fixed idea. It comes more step by step, and you have to open your senses to see if there are opportunities where you can make the work stronger. I mean, with a lot of these things, like that last one, I mean, I never intended to do, I mean, the exhibition or I mean, it's nice to let it also a bit open. And because if you have to do it and it's something you always need to do, then it's not good. I mean, even as a professional, you need to be always also a bit of an amateur. You know what I mean? Because I mean, if you, as a professional, are too professional, it becomes a bit boring after a while. And amateurs are more, I mean, that's where it started also, that I learn a lot from these images. And also I learn a lot about the images that I now found of my father, because, I mean, that he put like the bottom of the car, the rusty bottom of the car in the snow, is in a way quite a clever way to document that, because you have a nice big white background. And he didn't have that in the house, the white background, so he put it in the snow. So yeah, all these kind of things. Yeah. Anybody else, or maybe I need to give away books now for questions.
Bene, credo che there is the book signing now. Ok, now there is, c'è il book signing di Kessels qui fuori, ma sempre al chiuso, quindi non c'è pericolo di pioggia. E io ringrazio Giovanna Calvenzi, ringrazio Erik Kessels, ringrazio voi e ci vediamo prossimamente.